The oldest surviving roadside attraction is Lucy the Elephant, a 65-foot tall statue in Margate, New Jersey. It was built in 1882 and is listed on the National Register of Historic Places.
Daddy wasn't finding a bow wow. Daddy wasn't finding a bow wow. I love my little cat. I'm very fond of that. I'd rather have a big bow wow 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 wow. Daddy
Hello and
wasn't
welcome to the
finding a
Mochaverse. I'm
bow wow.
Lynette.
And I'm Skip.
Hello, Skip. How are you today?
Uh, okay. I was going to say wicked pissa, but no, I said it.
Yeah, you have to, we have to keep up the illusion that Massachusetts people don't say that all the time.
Right, exactly.
And now
Yeah.
we're like purposely saying it all the time because we don't say it all the time.
No, no.
You're just breaking the illusion. Well, hello, folks. So today we wanted to do another fun one because I'm just still not ready to talk about that dark subject that I've been researching yet. We're going to talk about roadside attractions. And because there's so many of them out there and there's so much information to gather, we're just gonna do like a handful. We're going to talk about some really cool ones. So this is not the episode about the world's largest peanut or the peach or any of that other stuff. We can do an episode about those because they're kind of funny. There's like a fight between different towns about that ball of twine. It's like which is the world? They're all the world's largest ball of twine. It's like no, that's
Oh, yeah,
that's
no, it's not.
that's not possible, but okay. But that's pretty funny. Yeah, so we're going to talk about some roadside attractions. Have you seen like in your travels, have you seen a lot of like quirky roadside attractions?
I have, but I haven't stopped. Yeah.
You just kind of drive by and go, there's that thing.
Yeah, there's that thing. Well, I think one time on the Kankamangas Highway in New Hampshire,
Oh yeah, I
there
love
was
that.
a old schoolhouse that was
Oh,
there. I think we stopped there one time. It was just sitting at like in the middle of the Kankamangas Highway, nothing else around it. And then
is it like
yeah,
one of those one room schoolhouses like from the
yeah,
olden days?
yeah,
That's pretty
yeah. And
cool.
then there'd be a volunteer and they dressed in the clothes of the time. So
Oh yeah, that is cool. I think of the ones that were local to me where I lived when I was in Massachusetts were like the green, oh wait, what color was it? The dinosaur that was on
on Route One. Yeah.
yeah, that used to be a mini golf course.
Hmm.
And then they took down the mini golf course and they kept the dinosaur because it's like a landmark. And
Right.
then in Rhode Island, there's the big bug. If you're driving to Providence, somewhere in between Massachusetts and Providence, Rhode Island, there's this huge like bug. It's a pest control company has this enormous like bug on
That's
this on
funny.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, that's always like a landmark. It's stuff like that, like like Paul Bunyan stuff and but I
Mm.
haven't seen tons of them up close. But they are really cool. I don't know, I really like them. So, I did some research and I looked up some of the more interesting ones. And it's funny because the ones that are in Massachusetts on our list, I've never been to, and now I kind of want to go to them.
Oh, okay.
You might have been to one of them, but we'll talk about that when we get to it. Let's just get into it. All right, so the first one I have here is Carhenge. Now, before I even describe what it is, the first thing this reminded me of was America's Stonehenge. Do you know what that is?
I vaguely, yeah.
So it's somewhere in New Hampshire, and I didn't look up the details. I could do that for another episode, but somewhere in New Hampshire, there's a thing called America's Stonehenge, and it's not replicating Stonehenge, but it's like a stone, it's like a circle of stone monument type of thing that the town in New Hampshire just kind of called it America's
It's in
Stonehenge.
Salem, New Hampshire.
Oh, it's in Salem, New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's less rural than I thought. It's it seemed to me
Yeah.
that it was like somewhere, I thought it would be somewhere near our old cottage. But yeah, so apparently it's a tourist attraction you can go and it's like probably disappointing if you've seen the real Stonehenge because it's probably much smaller. But I'm sure it's cute. I'm sure it's a nice place to
Yeah.
go.
It's just like, yeah, it's
Like a
weird.
couple of
Yeah.
rocks.
It's like it's just sort of funny. I don't know how it's like caves and stuff like that. And looks like a bunch of rocks, caves and stuff. It's just like, but it's it's 4,000 years old.
Well, that's
So
impressive.
yeah,
Like
it's
I,
man-made chambers and stuff like that.
like
But honestly, I'd never heard of before. So
yeah, I remember when I was a kid seeing like, I don't know, maybe flyers for it. Maybe when you
mhm.
go to you go to like the Howard Johnsons or something and they have that rack with all the touristy stuff. Maybe I saw it on one of those,
Yeah,
the little brochures for it and whatever. But yeah, that was kind of cute and interesting. I was gonna say something about it, but I don't remember what I was gonna say, so that's fine. We'll just move on. So Carhenge.
yeah.
It's in Alliance, Nebraska, and it was built in 1987 by a guy named Jim Reinders. And it was a memorial to his father. I guess his father was like really super interested in the real Stonehenge, and he had studied it, and his father was from England. What he did was he did a ton of research and he studied the original Stonehenge in such precise detail that he remade it to the footprint of how Stonehenge appears today, not the original structure as they kind of think it was built, but how it looks today, where it's sort of like ruins, out of cars. And so it's made out of 39 old cars, like ranging from like the mid 60s to the 70s. There's one 1950 DeSoto, and they're kind of like on there. Some of them are like standing up, like upright, and some of them are kind of like falling over, and they're leaning on each other and they're stacked on each other, just like Stonehenge. And he painted them all gray
To
to make
look
it
like
look like
stones. Yeah.
Stonehenge. Yeah, it does look pretty interesting, and I guess he gets a lot of tourists there. And the interesting fact about it that I liked was that on August 21st, 2017, the path of totality of like a solar eclipse, like a total eclipse, was included the site. So they were going to be able to see it. And like 4,000 people went there to watch the solar eclipse because
Huh.
Stonehenge is they're not really sure what Stonehenge was for, but I think some of the most educated guesses were that it had something to do with celestial predictions and astrology and astronomy.
Yeah, when I first saw it, I was thinking car hinge. I'm saying that doesn't look like it's spelled right, but it's a car hinge
It's a
for
car
cars.
henge,
It's
yeah.
just yeah, it's weird. It's
And yeah, it is weird. It's pretty cool. And then like there's some he also buried three cars somewhere on the site. And
oh,
it said he wrote something about it was like the lost souls of something in Detroit is gonna rise again. I don't know, some sort of weird
right.
thing that he wrote there. But then they expanded. It's not just the car henge now. They have all kinds of like art installations and different things there. It looks like a cool place to spend an afternoon now, not just one thing, which is pretty cool. Kind of turned into a thing you could spend the day at, which is pretty neat, I think. So that's Carhenge. This one is from our state, but I've never been there. It's the Paper House in Rockport, Massachusetts. Have you heard of this one before?
No, I haven't heard of it, but I bet that if I've been to Rockport,
Oh
so
yeah,
I didn't realize
maybe.
that was there.
Yeah, I don't know where in Rockport it is, but I imagine if both of us have never seen it or heard of it, maybe it's not in that area that everybody goes in Rockport. Like it's not where the shops are. It's probably a little bit off the beaten path, maybe.
That would be, yeah, it'd probably be off the beaten path. I know, again, I've been there, and I've been there for dinner because I got some nice restaurants there, and there's
Oh yeah.
a bunch of shops and stuff. And so I would imagine that, there would be was a tourist attraction.
Yeah. It was originally going to be like a summer house. So it was built by a Swedish mechanical engineer named Ellis Stenman.
Yeah.
He moved to the States and he used to work, I guess he worked on a company that was making paper clips and he had previously tried to invent a steam iron, which he didn't do successfully. So he built this house and then he was sort of upset about the waste of newspapers because
Mhm.
like back in the day newspapers were more ubiquitous and it was a daily thing and they were also bigger. back in the day. At
Right.
least they were wider and taller. And it was multiple times a day you would get a newspaper. That's how you got all of your news. And but then when you were done with it, you just threw it away. I mean, most people probably repurposed them for something, but he was kind of like upset about the daily waste of newspapers, so he decided to do something with them rather than just like line bird cages or whatever. So he decided to insulate this house that he had built with the paper, and like he rolled up the paper and he made this like special glue that had like different components, but he also used like it said like fruit extract was in the glue. I don't know.
Yeah.
And he made like the insulation, and then he decided to make the walls out of it and varnished it.
Huh. Yeah, I've heard of houses, older houses where you uh, take apart the walls, and
Uh-huh.
there would be newspaper for insulations. I think it might have been quite common
Yeah.
to do use it for insulation.
Yeah, and if you look at the pictures of the paper house, it's not just like layers of the paper varnished. It's like rolled up very tightly into like little logs.
Mhm.
And so I guess it would be like structure as well.
Yeah.
So he did that, and then he was originally going to put walls on, but then he found that the varnished paper was holding up so well that he just kept putting paper on and varnishing it to make the walls. And then he later made furniture. He made like a desk and a grandfather clock. The desk was made out of like newspapers that were all talking about Charles Lindbergh's transatlantic flight, which is pretty cool. The grandfather clock was made from newspapers from the capitals of each of the then 48 states. So he had a theme for that. He decided to take a newspaper from the capital of each state and incorporate it into the clock, which is neat. There was a cot like made out of newspapers from the First World War, and his wife made curtains out of newspaper as well. And I guess they're still there. And then if you look up the paper house, the main picture that they always show is this piano. But then there's a sign on it that makes it very clear. The piano is not made out of paper, but it is covered in paper. And if you look at the picture, it's like very tightly rolled up paper made into like sticks. So it looks like you're
Mhm.
making a log cabin out of rolled up newspaper. It's pretty
Yeah.
cool. After they built this, I think they finished building it in 1927. Yeah, 1927. Or no, I think that's when they started showing it in
It became
1927.
a tourist attraction,
It
right?
became a tourist attraction, and they were still living there while they were showing it to people, which is kind
Mm.
of funny. But they
Yeah.
lived there for 3 years, and then it must have gotten so popular that they were like, "Can we just have some privacy?" And they moved off site, and now they just use it, just open to the public for tours. And it still only costs $2 to get in, which is cool.
Mm.
Well, that's pretty neat. I would love to see that actually. I think it would be kind of cool. I imagine it's really neat to look at because you can see the printing still when you look at the papers.
Right. Mm.
But I imagine the varnish has a peculiar outgassing. It might be, I don't know if I want to stay in there a very long time.
Yeah, I would think that thinking about Rockport, if think about it, maybe Sue's family would know something about it where
Oh
you
yeah.
know, yeah. So I
Yeah,
have to
maybe.
ask her. Yeah.
It does seem pretty cool.
Hmm.
So that was the paper house. Also in Massachusetts, more towards your area, was the Museum of Bad Art. Had you ever heard of that one
Somerville,
before?
Massachusetts.
It,
Again, I
in
didn't realize.
Somerville.
I lived in Somerville for about a year.
Yeah.
Um, Somerville is in the next town over from where I grew up.
Yeah.
But no, I never even heard of it. Again, never even heard of it. You know.
Well, it might not have been when you were living there because it was founded in 1993.
Yeah, probably not. I think I lived there in the 70s. So.
So it was pretty cool. This guy, he found a painting in the trash.
Mhm.
And he showed it to his friends, and they probably just were laughing about it. And they were all kind of interested in looking at it. And the friend suggested that he should like do like a regular sort of exhibition. And so he started doing like regular showings in his house of different things he had found or different bad art that he had obtained. and it became very popular. More people were coming. So then he ended up like renting a space in the basement of a theater,
Mhm.
and then eventually got his own building. And it's kind of, I mean, quirky is probably one word to describe it. It's like the criteria for bad art, which is like something I would be very curious to define, to be able to define, is that it has to be seriously done. Like you're not making bad art on purpose. So it has to be somebody who really wanted to make art, but for some reason, like it has significant flaws. And it says in the description without being boring, which is like, okay. Um, so I guess a lot of this bad art, I looked at some of the pieces and it really does look like these are people who were serious artists who just haven't quite, in the opinion of the galleries,
Mhm.
they haven't quite hit the mark as far as expressing. I don't know. See, art is a funny thing because wouldn't it be different to everybody perceiving it? I
Yeah, it could be, and I think that it's funny, it's I sort of picked up on that this kitschy comment, it's kind of
yeah,
like, okay, what is kitschy? Or maybe, it's like a painting of big sad-eyed clowns or
right.
prints of a dog's playing poker or
Yeah.
things like that, which would be like, yeah, okay, that's kitschy, so that kind of stuff would be something that they wouldn't have.
They wouldn't have
uh
that because it was on purpose. Didn't your parents have the dogs playing poker?
I don't, it's funny you said that because it rings a bell, but I'm not sure where I would have seen it, but
I feel
yeah,
like it
it
was
could
in
have been.
that. So that I'm sure it was called a parlor instead of a den,
It's a
but I called it
parlor,
a, yeah,
yes. Yeah.
the red parlor
Yes.
with everything red,
Yep.
with the red walls that were kind of like velvety.
Hmm.
I think it
And
was
a
in
picture of
there.
Elvis painted on velvet. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, and she had that lamp that had the little dangly things on it that I was interested in as a kid, but I'm sure the adults were like, "Oh God." And I think the elephant table was in there.
The elephant.
There was like a
Yes.
coffee table with the elephant. Yeah.
Well, there is two elephant ceramics, I guess, as you want to call them, that I had purchased when I was in Vietnam and either sent it home or brought it home when I came home.
Yeah.
And that went from house to house. I think Dennis had it for a while, and then it was in my mother's house after, my mother's house. Then Dennis had it for a while, and then he asked me one point if I wanted it back, and
I would have taken it.
I wouldn't think so. That would not have fit.
But yeah, I vaguely remember dogs playing poker. And I also, but I definitely know that your parents had that one baseball painting
Mhm.
with it's like more of a famous, it was more of a famous painting where they're all standing there and it's about to rain and they've got their hand up because it's about to rain. They're all standing in the middle
Oh
of the
yeah, okay.
baseball field.
Hmm.
It's some sort of famous, it was probably Rockwell, that
Yeah,
painting.
could have been. Yeah, that sounds like a Rockwell type of thing.
It was a Rockwell type. If you could picture what Rockwell's people looked like, it was like that. They were just all standing there going, "Oh no, it's gonna rain." And it's like, okay, but yeah, I do remember that too. But that's funny. Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about the Bad Art Museum because I did look at some of the paintings, and while I didn't particularly like them,
Hmm.
I don't like to say that something is bad art. Although we did go to a modern art museum when we were in DC, and I wasn't pleased with most of the stuff I watched. But like some of the sculptures I didn't get, the garbage sculptures and
Oh
things like
yeah,
that.
well,
They're making a statement.
avant-garde stuff type of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
But when we were at that modern art museum, there were a couple of things that were really great. One of them was a video, and it was one of those really weird before AI, but it looked like it was AI assisted, really weird animated videos that I just
Hmm.
couldn't stop watching. And then we went into this other little room, and it was literally just a video of a guy in some Asian country. I don't know which country, but it was basically documentary style. But it was literally just this guy going to the river and catching like a couple of little fish, and then he just went back to his house and then he had a rice cooker and he had some rice and he's just sitting there eating his lunch. And Richard and I sat there and watched it for like 40 minutes and we were like, we need to move on. Like, I don't know. I want to see what happens to this guy. He's having his lunch. What's he gonna do next?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and it was very, I'm sure that the artist had something in mind, but it definitely worked for me just watching like just some dude having his everyday life. I don't know why it was so fascinating, but it was for
Yeah,
both of us.
yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if I would say bad art, but it is kind of funny. Like there's a little tongue in cheek with this museum. They like put the paintings near the bathrooms and things, and
Yeah, and I think it's, it's more, art like in the eye of the beholder. The the thing about not having stuff that's, gaudy or anything like that is probably a way to go. And, to say it's to say it's bad art, I guess it's again,
right.
it's, art is in the eye of the beholder, I guess, so
Right. Yeah. It's kind of like,
yeah.
I mean, we've been watching a lot of Antiques Roadshow, like old
Mhm.
episodes of Antiques Roadshow.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of ugly stuff on there that the antiques guys are really excited about, you know, and they
Well,
they talk specifically about techniques and things and saying how,
yeah.
talented and whatever. So, I mean, it really is a matter of taste changing, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's like the thing you're talking about with the crystals hanging from lamps and stuff.
Yeah.
One of my neighbors has, stuff in an antique uh, booth, and that's one of the things he sort of focuses on is those, and they actually
Yeah.
sell pretty well, and gets a good amount of money for it. But to me, yeah, that stuff is part of the Gilded Age,
Hmm.
where a lot of that stuff was ornate's probably the best word to describe it,
Well, yeah, and I remember watching a thing about the Victorian era
Mhm.
and part of and post World War II was like this too, where you get to an economic point in your area in a country where you're starting, like a war has ended
Yeah,
and you're starting to be a little more prosperous again, like regular people were starting to be.
yeah,
And this is the important distinction, like with Victorian era and post World War II era, was that like working class and middle class that was emerging was starting to feel like they had a little bit of disposable income. And so then you see a lot more decorative items. You see a lot more decor. And the Victorian era was all about that. There was like, if you look at Victorian houses, the interiors of Victorian houses, to us it would be cluttery
yeah,
and just too much. But for them it was like the more things you had, the more like knickknacks and tchotchkes and colors and different designs that you had. It was a it was like a statement of wealth. It was a statement of prosperity to have things.
have things, yeah.
Yeah.
And you could argue that it really even ran into the, into the century where the 30s, 40s, 50s,
Hmm.
and you look at automobiles, and they actually would have personality and
Hmm.
style,
Right.
where nowadays, a lot of the automobiles all look the same. They've got
The
nothing for personality.
right, because
Uh,
we're in an era of being understated with cars. And then anytime they try to be flamboyant, it's either some something for super rich people
mhm.
or it's like it doesn't make it. Like the PT Cruiser
Right.
was trying to
Yeah,
be
just
different and they were like,
yeah,
yeah, that's too different. We don't like it.
yeah. No, it's true. It's true. And I think it's you go through. That's where the phase we are now. But anyway,
Yeah, it is interesting. But
yeah,
yeah, so that's art, guys. We covered art. We cracked it open.
yeah.
So the next one is a mouthful. It is the world's largest collection of the world's smallest versions of the world's largest things. Did you
Okay.
did you get all
They
that?
get that all in one sign, right?
They
Yeah.
did. Yeah, it's a very cool looking place actually. It's in Lucas, Kansas, and it was originally just a traveling art show, but and she still travels, I guess, but it has a permanent home as well. And the artist is Erica Nelson. And what she does, this is very cool, actually. I would totally do this if I had free time and money and a source of income. Uh, she travels the country to all of these roadside attractions that we're not covering today, like the world's largest peanut and the ball of twine and the Paul Bunyan statue and all of those things. And then she photographs them, and she goes back home and she replicates them in miniature and displays them and in her display. And she probably sells them too. I looked at the website briefly. It looks like it's free to tour. I didn't see a cost to like tour the museum, but you can buy like memberships to something,
Mhm.
have a subscription to something, and you could donate to the cause. And they do have a gift shop, so you can buy things. You can buy little miniatures and maybe t-shirts that have a picture of it and things like that. I would love to visit that, but I don't know if I want to go all the way to Kansas just for that. I'd have to go for other
Right.
things. It would be something to convince Richard to go to Kansas. He's not. I want to see all 50 states before I die, but there's certain states that Richard has already been to that he wasn't impressed with. I said, we need to find something interesting in those states so that you'll go with me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that looks really cool. I would go to that. Again, the world's largest collection of the world's smallest versions of the world's largest things.
That's wild.
Place to visit. The next one, I actually had to stop because there were so many of these. We could actually do a whole episode on just these, and those are spite houses. Uh,
Yeah.
did you know before what a spite house was?
No, but I could get it from the
From the
from the name.
descriptions of them, yeah.
And by the way, it doesn't, it's one of those things where every once in a while you'll see a neighborhood complaining like somebody has a view of the ocean, and
Yeah.
then one of the neighbors buys the land next to them and builds
Yeah.
something that blocks their view of the ocean.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, I knew about spite houses 'cause I used to r read Atlas Obscura more often than I do. Um and there's one in Boston, which you probably are aware of.
Yes.
Um
Mhm.
the Skinny House.
Yep. In the North
Um
End, right?
yeah. So I thought that spite houses were all those little tiny ones that somebody built because somebody else didn't want to move out because they wanted to build on their land or whatever. Like, how the city wanted to turn this into a big bank and they were like, nope. And so they built like a tiny little house there so that they had to stop. And there's a lot of little houses like that where it was against the city. It was
Mhm.
spiting the city where they wanted to build either a highway or just another road. Or there's one example that I saw that I didn't write down, but that the city was purposely supposed to be a grid that was all just 90-degree angles. And this guy wanted to piss off the city, I guess. So he put his lot of land in a triangular fashion so that it would mess up the grid of the city on
Great.
purpose. Yeah. But a lot of these spite houses that I talked about were basically people spiting each other, usually family,
Oh
which
yeah,
is
yeah.
which is fun. I read about some spite houses like, divorcing stuff and, couples and things like that. But most of these one, like the first couple are brothers, which is kind of funny. So there's one in Marblehead that has two different conflicting stories, which is always fun because you never know which one is the truth. One of the stories is that the house was occupied by two brothers who like hated each other, and they basically split the house into two sections so they wouldn't ever see each other. Kind of like how my sister and I used to like,
Yeah.
well, she would put a line in the middle of the bedroom and say, you can't cross this line. This is my half and that's your half. And by the way, the line that she always put did not give me access to the door to get out.
Of course.
So what am I supposed to do with that?
Not much you can do.
So that's the one story is that it did that. And I looked at the picture of the house and it kind of does look like it was built in two different ways, so it kind of tracks. But the other story is that a man inherited a really small plot of land that was smaller than his brother's inheritance. And so he was pissed off about that. So he built the house to spoil his brother's view because his brother had built like an estate.
Yeah, and that's probably, and it doesn't have necessarily have to be a brother. I mean, I've seen, like you said, neighbors do it, and when I looked at the where it was, this is Marblehead. You got to say it
Oh
that
yeah,
way.
of course. Well, that happened in Rowley too with my
Yeah.
in-laws. I guess I could talk about it because that house is gone now. There's a historic district that they lived in, and the neighbor wanted to build a garage because
Yep.
he worked on bikes and he worked on cars and stuff. So he went to all the neighbors and he had, because he was living in the historic area of Raleigh, he had to go to all the neighbors and get like a permission thing, right?
Yep. Hmm.
And he did that. And my in-laws were one of the people who signed it. Now, I don't know about what the specific specs were that you had to write on the thing asking for permission,
Right.
but my father-in-law's story was that it wasn't made clear that this garage would be what he later called the garage mahal. So apparently it was an enormous garage, bigger than the house, and also had no windows facing the in-laws' house. And he said it was very ugly and he hated it. So he was instantly mad. And so they built like a little fence, and then the neighbor built a bigger fence. And then they did the thing where they were putting all the flags out saying, this is my property, this is your property. And so they put little trees up, and then the trees were moved because they were on the other property. And then one neighbor put a spotlight shining towards the in-laws' property. And so then the in-laws put a spotlight shining on their property. And then by the end of it, the neighbor had put this enormous American flag that covered like the whole side of the
Oh, Jesus.
garage facing the in-laws' house. Yeah.
It's
And he
just
still worked on his bikes outside the garage.
amazing, when neighbors, that's the kind of thing you always hear stories of it. You can always find these stories, and a lot of times, the people start off with being very friendly,
Yeah.
and then it changes, and then next thing you know, they don't talk to each other.
Oh
So
yeah,
it's
and then they just hate him. And it was funny because I always had friendly interactions with those neighbors, but I wasn't part of that fight, so it's fine.
mm,
So that's the one in Marblehead. There's another
right,
one called the Macabre Spite House. This one, I saw a couple of stories like this. Basically, you got brothers. There was one of the men, he came home from being away at sea and discovered that his brother had built this large, beautiful mansion in the wilderness, is what it said, a mansion in the wilderness. So he obviously wanted like tranquility and peace in this large mansion in the wilderness. And the brother was mad because like he took up the whole inherited land to do that.
right.
So he built a mansion directly across from it so that he couldn't be in the wilderness. And that was in
Yep.
Maine. That was in Rockport, Maine,
Mhm.
which is very funny. And yes, the skinny house in Boston.
Yep.
So again, that's another story about brothers being mad at each other, I guess. It's very funny to me. So two brothers, this is in the late 1800s. Two brothers inherited land, and one of the brothers used up almost all of it to build a house, while the other one was away serving in the military. And so when he
Mhm.
came home, he discovered that all he had was this tiny little plot of land. He built a 10.4-foot wide house right up against his brother's house, and also blocking like all the windows and the views and everything. And the house is still there. You said it was in the North End?
I think it's in the North End. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of it. It's funny. It looks really cute. And it's like 10 feet wide. It's like a basically a very small room, and then go upstairs and there's another very small room, probably. It's kind of cool. I would I would love to see some of those up close. And then the last one that I put in here, of course, there's hundreds of them, was actually the Waldorf Hotel in New York City.
Right.
So this is like rich people being pissy rich people. William Waldorf Astor, I guess he hated his aunt,
Mhm.
Caroline Webster Schermerhorn Astor. So he converted his mansion, which was right next door to hers, into the Waldorf Hotel. I don't know if like maybe that was tacky thing to do, turn your house into a hotel to ruin like the neighborhood. I don't know. But he converted it into the Waldorf Hotel, and he made sure there were no windows on the side next to her house. And I guess that's the Waldorf Astoria. I
Real
don't
love
know.
story. Yeah.
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 And that area, I was reading a little bit about that. I guess that's where the Empire State Building is, where the two mansions were at the time. So I don't know. I've been to New York a few times. I don't know it like the back of my hand or anything, but that's very interesting. And it is interesting to think about a city like New York just being houses at one point. It's kind of weird, right? I mean, that's the day of
Yeah.
the Astors, so that was a long time ago, but it's very interesting to think about. So that's the spite houses. And
Right.
like I said before, we could probably do a whole episode about spite houses and all their stories. It's the story that really gets me, I think.
Yeah, that's yeah.
This next one, I know you're very familiar with the person that it's named after. It is the R. Lee Ermey Musical Road in Palmdale, California. And you know who R. Lee Ermey is, right?
Oh, I know who he is. Yeah.
Yeah, he
Okay.
was the drill sergeant from
Right.
Full Metal Jacket.
Right. Mm.
And of course he did tons of things. He was a decorated staff sergeant
Yep.
in the Marines, and then he later became a character actor, and he did a lot of the advising for Full Metal Jacket when they were filming. And but I think he also this is the funny thing. I did a little bit of research on this a few years ago, so I'm a little rusty, but I think he might have also done the he did some advising for An Officer and a Gentleman. Those two movies were made almost around the same time. And if you watch those two movies, like I of course watched Full Metal Jacket first because that was just the first one I saw.
Right.
But if you watch Officer and a Gentleman, if you watch the basic training scenes, it's got some of the same lines in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and at first I was like, well, that's the staff sergeants probably said a lot of the same things because it was like it's like when you're doing the marching, you sing some of the same songs. I don't know, but I've been told, I'm sure the sergeants would run out of material after a while. So they probably said the same kind of insulting things
Yep.
to each other over the years. That's what I thought at first. But then I'm like, okay, some of these lines are exactly the same and the movies came out like close to each other. So I don't know.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, he was a drill instructor.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was the thing that a lot of he was able to improvise, but improvisation was uh, based on how he really was as a drill sergeant. You
Right,
know,
right.
uh,
So,
um,
but I thought that
yeah,
was really interesting with if you watch Officer and His Gentleman after watching Full Metal Jacket, there are some of the same exact insults in there. And not just you're a maggot. It was like some of the really specific ones. I forget
right,
which ones, but like, I didn't know they stacked. Oh, the steers and queers thing. Sorry.
right,
That was the one. But yeah, so we know who he is, and he was in Toy Story too. Like he was in like a lot of movies playing the same kind of dude because it got him a lot of fame and it got him probably a lot of money and he enjoyed doing it, I think, because I get the impression that he was basically a nice guy,
mhm,
but he probably had a lot of fun sort of being that persona well after retiring from the military. So the town he grew up in, they loved him and they decided to name like a stretch of highway after him. And then later, they built a 2,500-foot musical highway. Have you ever driven on a musical highway?
no,
So a musical highway is really cool. It's on the side of a highway they have those ridges like if you're they're supposed to be like if you're falling
yeah,
asleep it'll make that loud noise with your tires so you can get back
mhm,
on the road or whatever. It's those kind of ridges on the side of the road and they're specifically built and there's a sign that tells you exactly what speed to go on for this musical highway. So if you drive over those ridges at a specific speed on this highway, it's 45 miles an hour.
right,
Your tires will play music.
huh? Oh,
And
that's great. Yeah.
this particular one plays the Marines hymn, which,
Oh, that's
Ri-
cool.
yeah, Richard hummed that to me. I know the song. Once you go on YouTube and listen to the song, you know what it is. It's the Marine song. But yeah, so it
Mhm.
plays the Marines hymn, and it's like 30 seconds. It's not a super long piece of music, but there's a lot of musical highways, which is really cool. A lot of them in Europe, um,
Mhm.
and other places, but there are some in the States, and that's another really cool one that we could do an episode about. And I've never actually driven on one, um, but I have seen videos of people driving on them, and they're very cool. Are you looking one up right now?
No, no, I'm just, yeah. Once you did the army thing, I'm just looking at that his history, and he did a lot of movies and stuff, which I didn't realize.
He
Right?
did. He did a ton of one of his last movies was we've watched it a few times as a comedy. It was Neighborhood Watch. it
Yeah.
was Ben Stiller and uh Richard Ayoade is in it. It's like it's mostly guy humor, but it is kind of funny. It's like aliens. Aliens come to the town and they Ben Stiller decides to set up a neighborhood watch. Because at first he thinks it's crime, but then it's aliens, and they go after the aliens. And R. Lee Ermey is like he's like in his house, and they show up at his house, and he runs out with a shotgun and does his R. Lee
Right.
Ermey kind of personality. Like, what the hell are you doing on my property? You get blow your head off and all this kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And
Yeah.
yeah, what's your major malfunction kind of thing.
Well, yeah, it just and he was Sarge in Toy Story. I mean, all kinds of stuff like that was
He
just
did tons of stuff.
kind of odd, So for me, it's odd knowing, the Full Metal Jacket thing. But yeah,
He
it's
was in a
cool.
commercial actually. What was that commercial for? I think, okay, I don't remember what the commercial was for, but he was playing a therapist. It was probably one of those Snickers commercials where like if you're hangry, you
Yeah,
act differently. And
yeah.
so he's a therapist and somebody's like, sort of talking about their problems. He's like, he's basically like calling him a pansy and like, throwing a box of tissues at him and being like really
Being
like,
really character.
why don't you man up, you mammy pammy, and like throw a box of tissues. And it's a really funny bit. I'll have to send you a link to that once I find it. Richard showed it to me a million times, but I don't remember what it was a commercial for, which is it's really funny. Just to get on a tangent, isn't it really funny that distinctive commercials make you forget what the product was for? In fact, that's supposed to be the point of commercials, isn't it?
Yeah, it's supposed to be the point of commercial. You're right, and it does make you forget what the product is for. It's like, where's the beef? I mean,
Yeah.
what was that for? It was
It
for a
was for
hamburger.
Wendy's.
It's
Yeah.
Wendy's,
It was
but
Wendy's. Yeah.
you know, um,
But like half of those insurance commercials, I forget which insurance company it's for because they're all trying to be funny now because of
yeah.
Geico and Progressive and it's very funny that you're like,
Well,
oh,
that's
what was that one for again?
there's one I saw. Yes, I've been seeing it recently. Is the Liberty Mutual one, and they had this guy who was a bad actor, and he couldn't say Liberty Mutual. He'd say Bibbity Mutual, and there was a baby in a carriage saying Liberty, Liberty. He says, no, no, it's Bibbity. And then they go back and forth. And he said, he's being a baby. And the mother says, yeah, he's two.
That's good.
So
Yeah,
it
I
was
mean,
it's those things are kind of funny. And they make you're right. You kind of forget what the commercial is, and I think you forget it, but it's subliminally
yes.
in your brain, and that's really the whole idea. So
Yes, that's true. Although, like with the insurance commercials, the subliminal messaging, if it doesn't come across the right way, you might join the wrong insurance company thinking that the funny one was the one you picked. Like with Coke and Pepsi ads,
yeah,
those two things are so similar. Like I can't remember. There's a really funny commercial for either Coke or Pepsi where there's a guy, he's obviously the delivery guy for either Coke or
mhm,
Pepsi. And
yeah,
it's like security camera footage from a convenience store and he's loading up the fridge with one of them and then he
mhm,
looks around to see if anybody's looking and then he grabs the other one. I don't
yeah.
remember if it's Coke or Pepsi.
He grabs a Pepsi because
So
he's loading
he's a
up
Coke
Coke.
guy. Okay.
Yeah,
See,
yeah.
it doesn't really matter because that's a funny joke on both sides, right? But also you could get fired when you worked for Coke if you did that. So he should be looking
The
around.
whole, yeah, the whole problem, and the thing is it becomes Coke comes be synonymous with ordering a soft drink.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and also
and a
the
lot of times you'll
is
say,
Pepsi okay?
I want a Coke. And I say, no, no, we don't do Coke, so, uh,
Well, but yeah, Richard's dad said that like because he worked for Coke. So like
mhm,
if they would go to a restaurant, they knew obviously which restaurants served Pepsi and which served Coke. You just wouldn't go to the Pepsi restaurants, or if you went there, you wouldn't order anything to drink. But
right.
like it's a funny childhood memory, I'm sure, of
Yeah.
Richard's. He's sitting down and being like, I'll have a Coke, and like the waitress is like, is Pepsi okay? And they all just get up and leave. I'm sure it didn't happen that way, but it sounds
Yeah.
like it.
Yeah.
I'm picturing that in my head.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's pretty funny. Um, so the last one is the Little Village, which I really want to go to. It's in Pleasantville, Pennsylvania. Yeah, you saw the pictures, right?
Yeah, I saw the pictures, and basically, it's they're probably big enough that you can walk through them,
Yeah.
but they're not miniature. They're
I think
just
they're like half scale or something or
half
third
scale.
scale
Yeah,
or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, but that's really cool because I'm super into miniatures. I just
Mhm.
don't have the room for them here. Otherwise I would. I do have a miniature bookcase. It's called a anxiety bookcase.
Yeah,
I'll show it to you afterwards. It's just a little box and it's got bookshelves and it's got teeny tiny books in it and you
yeah,
set them all up and then when you're anxious, you shake it like an etch-a-sketch and they all fall and then you spend time putting them all back meticulously and it's
yeah.
relaxing if you have a brain like mine.
And you know what's wild about this thing is it's on private property.
Yeah.
So the couple asked visitors to not park on the grass.
Yeah, don't park on the grass. That's cute. It's not, they probably haven't, because it's probably free. They haven't made any money to like put a
Could
parking
be.
lot or
Yeah,
anything like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, but they're still building. I guess they're building more buildings. They're cute, cute buildings.
Yeah, and that was it. There was a thing, a crab shack, which was basically just
Hmm.
looked like it was really overgrown grass and all kinds of stuff like that. So,
Yeah, they have like a diner, a filling station, a school, a
yep.
church. And I guess when you open, like if you go in the diner, there's like plates and food and things like that.
Mhm.
And the church has like pews and like
Right.
Bibles and things like that.
Bible. Yep.
That's really neat. It's the details
Yeah,
that
it is.
attract
Yeah,
me.
the detail thing. Yeah,
And
cool.
over in the UK, that's actually a more common thing where they have things called model villages
Hmm.
where most villages, I don't want to say all because I've never been there, but I've seen a lot of them. A lot of villages have in their village a model village, which is like it's like a model of their village down to specific detail of all the buildings and the streets and everything. And they do like competitions for the best model village, like in these
Well,
rural areas of England, and they're very detailed. It's almost like, when you see like people have model trains
right,
and they build the sets for them that have like the houses and the trees and the mountains and everything like that. It's really like that. It's like they've just replicated or duplicated their entire village in miniature. And it's like, it's smaller than this one that we were talking about in Pleasantville, Pennsylvania.
right,
So it's basically like the buildings aren't as tall as they're about as tall as a small child, basically. But it does look like what it would look like to look at one of those big train sets, where the houses are all there. There's like little people walking down the street and all the buildings are the same. There's like little cemeteries and things like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
And I guess it's a very common thing in the UK to have those, which I would go to all of them and want to spend time there. I love that sort of thing. Miniatures are definitely my jam. I would go to every miniature museum that I could find if I ever go traveling, which I haven't. But but yeah, so those are some of the cool roadside attractions that I found. I think we could definitely do another episode of these kinds of things. And I do want to do an episode of very specifically all of those sort of those weird ones that are like the biggest peanut because it's just such a strange thing to me that like somebody wants to have just a big concrete peanut and say, that's
yeah.
the biggest
Just
one we made.
yeah, exactly.
There it is. Come and look at it.
Yeah, in some ways you think, okay, well, if it's it's a peanut factory or something, okay, that makes sense. Or a,
Yeah.
big giant potato chip or something like that, which is kind of bizarre. But
They
it
have one
was,
that's like a house, it's like a building that looks just like a big basket. I've seen that one.
yep. Yeah, one place is it was thinking about it, and I don't, this is digressing a little bit. There was a place called Star Island in either Maine or New Hampshire. I'm not sure which, but Star Island is, you get on a boat and you go out to Star Island, which is
Yeah.
like it feels like it's in the middle of the ocean,
Yeah.
and there's an oceanic research facility right across from it,
Oh,
and
cool.
it ends up being a summer camp for some religious groups, and
Oh,
they have all kinds of buildings there which are I guess dated, if you will. There in the nice small church with a lot of detail to it. Really
Yeah.
kind of neat. We went there one time. Actually went there a couple of times.
That
Um,
sounds like Maine to me because you say the Oceanographic Institute, there's that college up in Maine
mhm.
um that that does all the oceanography stuff.
Yep.
One of my classmates went there. So it's probably Maine because Maine has that university college, whatever it is, that specializes and they have the Oceanographic Institute there.
Yeah, it's interesting because Star Island is a private property, and you go there as a guest, which they have ships that, boats that go out there, and you can do they do conferences, and you can do day visitors, and they have thinking about it, we touring the conference hall, and they have guests stay there,
Mm.
and they have old timey showers, I guess timey, old time showers, but they're limited. There'd be a sign there saying you're only limited to a certain amount of time in the shower,
Yeah.
because obviously, the water supply is
On
very
an island,
limited,
yeah, it's
on
kind
an
of hard to
island,
do resources like that.
and yeah, it's an interesting place. I don't, it's not something you go to in the wintertime, but yeah, I've been there a couple of times. I just thought of it because it's an interesting place.
Yeah.
And you'd, I think, I can't remember how the boat trips there, uh, they go maybe every few hours.
Oh yeah.
So if you go out there in the morning, then, a few hours later, there'd be the boat going back.
Oh
We
yeah.
did it one time, we did it with some friends of ours, and another time we did it with the company. You
Mhm.
know, you may have actually, you were probably, I don't know if you were you might have been part of it because there was a choice. We either went to Water Country or Star Island. And in that particular one, we went to Water Country. And then the next year, we went to Star Island, so.
Yeah, that
And
sounds
when we
right.
went to Water Country, we went, you came along in Beverly too. Yeah. Because,
Oh, I remember going to Water Country. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that was a company outing.
Oh
So,
yeah. Oh
yeah.
yeah. And I remember there was one company outing that was like at a country club too.
Yes. Yeah.
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 I remember
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course like it's it is fascinating places like that are fascinating to me, tourist places because of the history of them too,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
Like, went to Alcatraz and Angel Island, you got to learn about that, but also more local to us was the Willows,
Yep.
which was like the TB hospital.
Yep.
Which is very cool. Like when you learn about you, but when you go to the Willows, you don't see any evidence of that because none of the buildings are there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
None of the old sort of sanitarium buildings are there
Yeah.
uh anymore. Um and then like on Winter Island there's that haunted I thought was a haunted house when I was a kid, but it was really the Coast Guard station. It
Yeah, the
just
Coast Guard station.
it looks like a
When
haunted
I was
house.
in my photography phase, we took a lot of pictures out there before they developed it.
Yeah.
And I used to take your kids swimming there because it was a really sort of a private cove,
Yeah,
and it wasn't as crowded as the Willows. Um,
that's
and
true.
before and I mean, since I think I haven't been there in years, but I think there was a Coast Guard station there, but now they have campers that go there,
Mhm.
and they have a restaurant and all kinds. So they really, developed it.
Yeah, they do the Christmas tree burning every year, I think. They do a big
Mhm.
bonfire with the Christmas trees
Yep.
on Winter
Yep.
Island. Um, and that's another thing is that we could do an episode on is abandoned structures and abandoned
Yeah,
places.
it was abandoned, and then they have. I don't know how successful it is, but I know that they had did a lot of a renovation project, and they put businesses there, and I think they were doing campers would go there.
Yeah, I think they still do.
Yeah, they probably still do. Because it's a huge cement area, which, think about
Right.
this Coast Guard, they could do, there'd be a lot of vehicles and stuff that could be there, and they had a huge warehouse too. So a lot of room to do stuff there. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Very cool. All
yeah.
right. Yeah. So we'll have to revisit some fascinating things like that pretty soon.
Yep.
So folks, just another reminder, please send us an email at mochiverse@gmail.com. That's MOCCIAVERSE@gmail.com. And be sure to subscribe and rate us on Apple Podcasts so that we could maybe get some visibility. I've noticed that we have some downloads in different countries, but that's probably just a server. We had like 9 downloads on on our previous episode. I was really excited, and then I looked and it was like not in America. So probably not anybody that we know. It was like Japan and a couple of other countries. And I was like, ooh, we have listeners in Japan. I don't know if we have listeners in Japan, but if you are listening in Japan, I'm very happy that you're there. Hello.
Yep.
I don't remember any of my Japanese that I learned, but I can relearn it again for you if you want me to.
Yep.
So that's that's us. And my dad's over here chomping at the bit. I think he wants to tell me some dad jokes.
Yes,
All
I
right.
do. And
Okay.
and and
I'm ready.
let's just go right to it. Where do boats go when they get sick?
Where?
To the boat dock.
Oh, okay. I'm like, wait, what is that?
Pretty obvious.
Yeah, it is. I'm just
I
dumb.
don't trust those trees. They seem kind of shady.
Shady.
My wife is really mad at the fact that I have no sense of direction. So I packed up my stuff,
My
and
stuff.
and right, yeah,
Oh, yeah, okay. Let's do a take two on that one because that's a good one.
yeah.
Do that one again.
Okay, my wife is really mad at the fact that I have no sense of direction.
Hmm.
So I packed up my stuff and right,
See, that's a deep one. You have to think. It's a
you have to
thinker.
think. Hey, listen, this is one we all like. How do you get a squirrel to like you?
How?
Act like a nut.
Uh,
Uh, this is a timely one. Why don't eggs tell jokes?
why?
They crack each other up.
Oh my gosh. All right.
This one, this is a variation. I don't trust stairs. They're always up to something.
They are.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
What do you call someone with no body and no nose?
Nobody knows.
There you go.
Good. Very good. I mean, sort of good, but good.
Hey, listen, did you hear the rumor about butter? Well,
Uh,
I'm not going to spread it.
no.
Why couldn't a bicycle stand by itself?
Why?
It was too tired.
Okay. Very good.
Okay, what did one hat say to the other?
What?
Stay here. I'm going on ahead.
That's a good one. I
That's a
like
good
that
one. Yeah,
one.
yeah. Why did Billy get fired from the banana factory?
Why?
He kept throwing away the bent ones.
Oh boy.
Uh,
All right. That was a good one.
but I'm bumped.
Yeah, we should quit while we're ahead. All right, folks. We will see you in 2 weeks. Bye.
Bye bye. Ciao for now.
Oh my gosh.
Cool.
Daddy wasn't finding a bow wow. Daddy wasn't finding a bow wow. I've got a little cat. I'm very fond of that. I'd rather have a big bow wow.
Hey, buddy, what you doing?
Hey, buddy.
Just let in there. Being cool, right? You being cool? And not a peep out of him.
No, he's such a good boy.
Yeah,
And
he's a
he's
big
probably
guy.
a little confused as to why you're just talking the whole time. He probably just assumes you're on the phone.